If you haven't heard of Zhong Kui, you can't claim to know Chinese mythology. He is the demon catcher who walks between hell and earth, too ugly for an emperor, too dangerous for hell. And before he guarded a single doorway, he was a scholar who ranked first in the entire empire and lost everything because of his face. This is his story. In Tang-dynasty, China, a young man named Zhong Kui had done what almost no one could do. He had ranked first on the Keju, the imperial examination, the hardest road to power in the empire. Years of study on Mount Zhongnan, the long journey to the capital, an entire family's hopes carried on his shoulders. At last, the examiners placed his paper at the top of the empire. It should have been the proudest day of his life. But there was one gate left: the palace interview. The emperor himself would look upon the top scholar and give his blessing. Zhong Kui entered the hall. He bowed. The emperor looked up and froze. The old accounts describe a face like no other. Leopard eyes, a thick wild beard, skin the color of iron. The face of a man who seemed to have already walked through the underworld and come back. The emperor said nothing about the writing, nothing about the talent. He looked at Zhong Kui's face and spoke a single sentence. "This man cannot be my top scholar. Too ugly for the emperor." That was the verdict. In an instant, the title was gone. Zhong Kui did not argue. He did not beg. He turned, walked to the nearest palace pillar, and drove his head against the stone. Again, and again, until he stopped moving. The court fell silent. The emperor, shaken, ordered him buried in a red scholar's robe, the highest honor reserved for the empire's brightest minds. But Zhong Kui was already gone. In Chinese myth, death is rarely where a story ends. When Zhong Kui's soul descended into Diyu, the underworld, it entered a vast bureaucracy of judgment, punishment, and return. But something went wrong. This man was not meant to be here as an ordinary dead soul. He had been wronged, and his talent, his fury, and his sense of justice had all come down with him. The underworld did not know what to do with him. Too gifted to punish, too angry to send back, too powerful to lock away. So the judges of the dead gave him a title: Ghost King, a judge of demons. They did not chain him inside hell. They stationed him between hell and earth, free to hunt whatever slipped across the line. Too dangerous for hell, not because he fought his way out, but because hell looked at him once and decided he was more useful on the outside. Time moved forward. A new emperor took the throne, Xuanzang. For a while, the empire was at peace. Then the emperor fell ill. Some accounts say malaria. For more than a month, nothing worked. Not the doctors, not the priests, not the medicine. Then one night, lying in a burning fever, he dreamed. In the dream, a small demon slipped into the imperial bedchamber. It took a perfume pouch from the consort's table. It picked up the emperor's jade flute. Then it danced through the room, mocking him, as if the palace belonged to it. The doors burst open. A massive figure stood in the doorway, blue-robed, one bare arm, bare feet on the stone floor, eyes like burning coals, a beard like twisted iron wire. The giant seized the demon, tore out its eyes, and ate it, alive. The emperor could barely speak. "Who are you?" The giant dropped to one knee. "I am Zhong Kui, a failed candidate, and I have sworn to rid your empire of every demon and every ghost." Xuanzang woke. The fever was gone, completely gone, as if it had never touched him at all. He summoned Wu Daozi at once, the greatest painter of the Tang-dynasty. "I had a dream," the emperor said. "Paint what I saw." When the scroll was finished, Xuanzang studied it for a long moment. "That is exactly what I saw," he said. "It is as if you had been standing right beside me." Then he issued an imperial decree. Every household in the empire would hang a portrait of Zhong Kui on its door, to drive away evil. The scholar, once rejected for his face, had become the guardian of the entire empire. Centuries later, the story was written down. In the 11th century, the scholar Shen Kuo recorded it in his Dream Pool essays, one of the most important works of medieval Chinese learning. The exam, the suicide, the dream, the decree. It was all there, preserved in ink. But the name Zhong Kui was older than the story. Long before Shen Kuo, long before the Tang dynasty, long before any emperor dreamed of any ghost. In the Zhou dynasty, one of the oldest texts in Chinese civilization, the Rites of Zhou, described a ceremonial mallet used in exorcism rituals. Its name was Zhong Kui. Different characters, the same sound. The same word appeared again in the commentary of Zhuo, a text from 2,500 years ago, in the name of a clan whose work was to beat demons away with wooden mallets. For more than 1,000 years, those syllables had meant one thing: a hammer that drives away ghosts. Then, in the Tang dynasty, when people began telling the tale of this ghost-catching hero, they reached for the oldest word they had for the thing that destroys evil. They named him after the hammer. In the 17th century, the scholar Gu Yanwu opened the old books and traced the line clearly. Zhong Kui, he wrote, is a phonetic shift of Zhong Kui, the mallet. In ancient times, people used hammers to drive away ghosts. A tool became a name became a man became a legend. After Wu Daozi painted the emperor's dream, the image spread. In painting after painting, Zhong Kui appeared in red, the color of yang, the living force no ghost could bear to touch. He carried a sword. He stood on demons. His face remained terrible on purpose. In Chinese folk belief, you did not drive away ghosts with beauty. You answered fear with something fiercer than the ghost itself. Above his head, artists often painted a bat. In Chinese, the word for bat is fu, the same sound as the word for fortune. 5 bats meant the 5 blessings: long life, wealth, health, virtue, and a peaceful death. The most frightening face in the pantheon was also a face that brought luck. By the Ming dynasty, families hung his portrait not only to repel demons, but to welcome prosperity. During the Dragon Boat Festival, when summer heat carried disease and evil spirits, his image went up on doors. During the Lunar New Year, it went up again. Protection all year round. There is another story, one that rarely travels with the sword and the demons. Before Zhong Kui died, he had a friend named Du Ping. When no one else would pay for the burial of a failed scholar, Du Ping did. Years later, after Zhong Kui had become a god, he returned the favor. He arranged for his own sister to marry Du Ping, and when the wedding day came, he escorted her himself. The tale became a classic of Chinese opera. Zhong Kui marries off his sister. On stage, demons carry the bridal sedan chair. Firecrackers burst. Music rises. The ghost-eating king walks his little sister down the aisle. The legend did not remain inside China. Around the 12th century, it crossed the sea to Japan, where people called him Shoki. Japan placed him somewhere China never had. Not only on scrolls, not only on doors, on rooftops, In Kyoto's old townhouses, small ceramic Shoki figures still sit on the roof ridges. Japanese folklore said demons rode the wind and came down from above, so that was where Shoki stood guard. By the Edo period, he was everywhere in Japanese art. Ukiyo-e prints, no theater. Even, strangely enough, the mascot on a box of mothballs, the ghost catcher watching over a closet. The story traveled to Korea, to Vietnam. A demon hunter born from an ancient exorcism, Mallet ended up keeping watch across all of East Asia. On August 19, 2025, at Gamescom in Cologne, a trailer opened with a figure in red. Leopard eyes. A tiger beneath him. A landscape like ink come alive. The ghost-catching god who wanders between hell and earth. A black myth, Zhong Kui. Within a day, millions of people who had never heard the name were searching for the story behind the face. And so the tale keeps moving. From a ritual mallet, to a surname, to a scholar, to a god on the door, to a figure on a rooftop, to a screen lit up in a hall in Germany. From a hammer to a name, from a name to a man, from a man to a god. That is Zhong Kui. If there is another figure from Chinese mythology you want to hear told this way, leave the name in the comments. Thanks for watching.